Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to show you the Mototech Trike 350 watt, 500 watt, and 800 watt models. We're going to go over the assembly, some troubleshooting, and how to use the product. When the product arrives, you're going to receive it in a brown box with styrofoam packing. The box will look much worse than this, as these heavy items do go through rough shipping. When you receive it, you can see you have all the individual parts. There will be 3 sections of styrofoam. Down here you'll see the base of the trike is already assembled, and the front end with the front wheel and the handlebars. So we're going to take all this out and we're going to show you how to assemble. Okay, so you can see we have it out of the box now. We're going to take the front end and it's going to bolt to the main section here with the 2 bolts that are already in the frame, so we'll just take those off. Now if you have a second person to give you a hand, that will help this go quicker. Make sure you get these nuts nice and snug. If the manual mentions any set bolts, little short screws or bolts that go on the front of here, those are no longer used and they're not included. Now once you have the front end bolted on, we're going to slide the handlebars into the second handlebar piece that comes in the box. Just open up the clamp here. And now the most difficult part, or the part that most customers have a problem with, is how to attach the handlebars to the scooter. So if you look here, there's this long Allen bolt. We're going to have a cylinder-shaped nut that's cut at a 45-degree angle. So how this works is when you tighten the bolt, this is going to push off to the side and it's going to wedge itself inside the tube. Now to get to that bolt, you have to unscrew this finger bolt and we'll have access to the top of the Allen bolt. So we'll slide that into the scooter. All the way down. Now the one tricky part too is the hinge is going to be off at a 45-degree angle. So what you want to do is you want to have the handlebars up. You want to get them straight with the front wheel, and then you're going to fold the handlebars down, and you'll notice they fold at an angle. That's actually done that way on purpose for extra support. And then you're going to tighten the Allen bolt in the center to secure the handlebars. And then once you're done, bring the handlebars back up, tighten your finger bolt, and your bars should be straight with the front wheel. Now with this clamp too, if your handlebars have a little bit of movement, you'll want to tighten down the clamp here. So simply, if you push the clamp in and it's not tight enough, open it back up, and then you can tighten this nut, bring the clamp back down, and that'll secure it again better. On to the next step. You will have to plug in the front end of the trike into the base unit. You notice here on this 350 watt model, we have 2 round plugs. You'll notice one of them has the ends covered so the male prongs don't get bent in shipping. Now you want to inspect these, make sure everything's straight. If they're not, take something and try to bend those straight before you plug them in. Same with the opposite connector. This has a lot more small pins. Make sure all of those are straight and not bent over before you plug in. Now when you do plug these in, another common problem with this one with the smaller pins is that the customers are not getting the connector pushed all the way in. So if it seems like it's pushed in but there's still a gap between here, the trike will not work, and this is one of the most common problems. So make sure you do have that pushed in. Some people have said they've had to use almost like a vice grips to help push them in to get it all the way snapped in, and then the trike started to work. Next step, we're going to remove the battery cover. Usually it will not be screwed on when you get it, but if it is, sometimes the factory changes things. Just simply remove the 4 screws around and the cover will pop off. Inside, this is where the batteries are, and you also have to install the fuse when you get it. Now sometimes the fuse is taped on the inside top cover of this battery box. If they're not there, it's going to be in the bag with the manual and the tools. Also these gold metal clips, you'll need to use 4 of those. You'll attach those around the battery cover, and that's actually going to be the nut for the screw to go through when you put the cover back in to secure it. Now the fuses, you're going to have 2 fuses. One is just an extra. You can see here it's going to be a clear fuse. You're going to put that fuse in this fuse holder. When you do put it in, it will spark. That is normal, so don't think anything is wrong. Once the fuse is in, then you'll close the cover on it, and then you can close up the battery box and you'll be ready for the next step. Okay, we're going to show you how to connect the basket. So we have this bracket at the front of the scooter, and then we also have this bar going down to the front end that's going to support underneath. So it's pretty self-explanatory. You'll put the basket on. On the bracket here, there's 2 holes. You're going to put those with the lower holes in this plate. This is the bracket mounting hardware. The flat bracket is going to go on the inside of the basket, and then you're going to simply use a nut and a bolt to attach 2 bolts here to secure it there. On the bottom, to connect it to the wire support arm, there's another bracket that has a crease in it. That crease is going to go into the round bar. This is going to go underneath the trike. That crease goes in the bar, and then from the top you're going to put 2 bolts to secure, and your basket's ready to go. And last but not least, we have the front fender, which is pretty self-explanatory. The bolt and nut will already be on the trike, and you'll see there's a bracket on the front fender, and you'll simply attach that there. Next we have the seat, also explanatory. The bottom of the seat post will slide in. You'll tighten these 2 Allen bolts to secure, and then we have the top seat pad. We'll open up the clamp, slide the seat in, set it to the height you want, tighten this down. Next, we'll be ready to use the scooter. The keys are generally zip tied to the handlebars, you can see here. Simply insert the key in the keyhole, turn it on. All the full battery meter lights should turn on when you turn on the key if everything's connected correctly. The batteries do come charged out of the box, but we do recommend, because they've been sitting, on the way from the factory in the warehouse, it's always best to charge them before you use it. That'll help the batteries last a lot longer. Once the trike is on, it's pretty much twist the twist throttle, and it'll start to go. On the left handlebars we have a horn, and we also have a reverse button. So you just push the button in one time, now we can drive in reverse, push it again, we go to forward. One thing to note about the brake does have a kill switch wire in it, so if you're holding the brake inward, the button is depressed and then the throttle will not work, and that's just a safety so you can't burn out the motor while you're also holding the brake. Now this can come in handy when you're troubleshooting. Sometimes if your brake lever got bent or it's not releasing all the way back, it won't push the kill switch button in. So if you're troubleshooting to try to find out why the motor's not working and everything's turning on, you can follow this wire down to the control box, disconnect it, and that'll bypass it, and then you can see if it works. Then you'll know if that is the problem. Alright, now we're going to show you how to charge the scooter. So when you get your charger, it's going to be an external charger. You're going to plug it in your wall outlet or as an extension cord here. Whenever the charger is plugged into just the wall outlet, you will have a green light. Now when you plug the charger into the scooter, on this specific model, the charging port's in the back of the scooter, has a rubber cover over it. We'll flip that open. And then the charging port has a groove here so that you cannot plug it in incorrectly. So we'll make sure we get that in. Now whenever the charger is connected to a low battery pack like it is here, the light on the charger will turn red and stay red. If it's flashing, you have an issue. If there's no light on the charger at all, it usually means your charger's bad. But how this works is this light will stay red now for, depending on how much needs to be charged, could be anywhere from 10 minutes up to 6 hours if it's completely drained. If you never see a red light, that means there's no connection to the low battery pack. So that's when you'll want to check, make sure your fuse is installed, make sure the fuse is not blown. There's 3 12-volt batteries in this scooter. They're wired in series. So you're going to want to go through, check every battery, check every terminal, make sure none of the wires are broken on the connectors. All this glue on top is just hot glue to help things from vibrate and loosen shipping. You can pull off the glue if you want, so you can tighten these back down, make sure everything's tight. If you do have a voltmeter, we'll show you right here. One thing that's always good to test is to make sure your battery pack has power coming out of it. So if you find the main battery plug, you can see here it's connected to the fuse holder. We'll disconnect that. This is the end that's coming from the battery pack, and we'll just read the voltage with our voltmeter here. And we have 3 12 volts in series, so we should have over 36 volts. And you can see here we have 43 volts, so we know that everything's connected and the batteries are good and almost to a full charge. Now if you turn on the scooter and you have no power at all, start with the battery pack like we showed you, the fuse. This gray box, this is the controller, the main brain of the scooter. What I would suggest is you cut all these zip ties, disconnect each one of these connectors, the white ones, the black ones, one at a time. Look inside, make sure the metal pins are not bent over on the inside, then plug them back in. Sometimes during assembly at the factory, when the factory plugs these connectors in, the wires will push out the back, then they're not making a connection. So it's always best to look over everything if it's not working first. And then we can troubleshoot from there. Generally, when it comes to charging the battery, these batteries, you know, they say you'll get 250 cycles, which means you could drain it all the way down, charge them back up, you know, 200 to 250 times. But if you don't maintain the battery, they're going to go bad a lot quicker. So there's 3 general rules. Always charge the scooter when you're done using it after you drain the batteries. You want to get them back up to a charge right away. Second thing is never leave the charger plugged in for longer than a full day. None of these are smart chargers, so if you leave them in for weeks or months, it'll slowly overcharge the batteries. The batteries will start to bulge, and then they'll go bad and you'll need to replace them. Another thing is a lot of customers will let their trike or scooter sit over the winter and they'll never charge it, and the battery's sitting around, they will go bad. So we recommend charging it once per month, and then that'll help maintain the batteries and last a long time. Now, a couple things to know before you get out and start riding. We do recommend that you check the tire pressure. The PSI will be written on the side of the tire. It's best to get the rear tires up to the correct amount of pressure, otherwise they will sag, create a lot of drag, and then you're going to get a lot of front wheel spin. These are front wheel drive, and that's for safety, so they can't do a wheelie and tip over. So definitely having pressure up in the back will help. You could actually let a little pressure out on the front if you want to get a little more grip. Some customers that like to go off-road, grass, or dirt, they'll just replace the front tire with a knobby tire. That'll help them get a little more grip. Otherwise, one thing to know when you're riding is just lean forward a little bit, get the weight on the front tire till you get moving, and then that'll take care of some of the wheel spin. Now, on the Trike 500 watt model, it's almost identical to this. It does have one extra battery. It is a 48 volt model, so I have a little bit more power. The one thing they changed is they moved this gray control box to the front, and it'll be in a black box, and that's just for ease of use, and they were running out of room basically with the 4th battery. Now let's take a quick look at the Trike 800 watt model. This one's a little bit different, but similar as far as assembly. The basket's done a little bit different. If you look on the front, there's already going to be a bolt with a nut. That's simply just going to go through one of the lower holes on the bracket in the front, and then the bottom bracket, this one attaches a little bit different. When you put this on, you're just going to take the flat piece of metal, you're going to put the flat piece of metal over the top on the inside of this, and then attach with 2 bolts. So self-explanatory. It's nice to show it though if it does get confusing for you. Now here's the controller box on the front like the 500 watt model would be. The difference with this model is the battery pack is not underneath the footboard. It's actually mounted here, so the battery pack will be separate in the box. You will have to bolt this onto the frame. It's just going to be 4 simple bolts to attach it. You're going to have this main battery cable that you'll attach, which goes into the control box. Now the fuse is already installed this model, so you shouldn't have to do that. If you have any power issues, you can just simply open this battery box, a couple Phillips screws, open it up, make sure all the batteries are connected, make sure the fuse is good. But we have seen one common problem from shipping. The 2 battery wires that go into the battery box, sometimes those wires will pull out of the white connector inside, and then you won't make a connection. So if you open up the box, take a look, inspect those connectors. Same with the opposite side. This side goes into the front control box here. Now if I look, you'll see the 2 main power wires come to this white connector. These wires sometimes back out of the connector and it doesn't make a connection. So simply just slide it back in and then make sure you got power, everything should work. Just like if you have problems with the other model, here's all the connectors from the control box. These go to all the different components on the trike. Unplug one at a time, look them over, make sure nothing's bent, everything's slid in all the way, and then you can go from there. An additional thing on the back of the trike, you will have to install the fenders. Pretty straightforward. You'll have 4 bolts to attach them. Underneath here you will have to attach the brake cable. Now the brake cables are a little bit long. Basically you'll just want to route this underneath the frame. You can sneak it under the cover. Probably best to zip tie them out of the way, and then you'll attach it to the brake caliper here. Now these are just like kind of similar how like a bicycle brake works. So the cable on the back here is squeezed by this bolt. So when you're pulling the brake lever, if it's not squeezing the disc hard enough, you can simply loosen this nut, pull the cable through more to retighten it, and then that'll give you more of a pull on the brake caliper. Now if these wheels do not spin free and the pads are rubbing on the disc, look at these 2 finger bolts here that have the springs on them. Adjusting these in and out will pivot the brake caliper in and out so you can center the disc between the pads. The idea is just so that it spins free and there's no friction there to slow down the wheel or lock up the wheel. You can also adjust the center bolt here, which will kind of help push the pads in more, but generally when the pads wear all the way down, you'll just want to order new pads. Now, one common problem we've had on the Trike 800 watt model is a lot of customers will install the front wheel backwards. So if you notice your trike is going slow forward, you can try the reverse button and see if it'll want to go faster. If it does, then you know your front wheel's installed backwards. Another way to tell is this mounting tab that holds the front axle should be forward from the front fork. If you have it backwards, obviously it'd be facing to the back. So that's one thing to check. And another thing is this model actually has a parking brake on the brake. So if you have your parking brake set, like we talked on the 350 watt model and also the 500, these brake levers do have kill switch buttons. So if you don't have this brake released, the throttle and the motor will not engage. So always double check that if things aren't working. Other than that, that should go over all the basics. If you have any questions or problems, definitely reach out to us. Hit us up on the ticket system. You can email us directly. We'll help you troubleshoot. We have parts available and we can answer any questions. Thanks and have a great day.